Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and really thank you very much for having this hearing. As many have mentioned, this is a very important issue for all of us here and definitely for our constituents back at home. I looked at the request from the President in the form of this joint resolution, and under Section C, limitations, it says the authority to grant does not authorize the use of the United States Armed Forces in, and I quote, enduring offensive ground combat operations. So my question to you on the panel is, what does that mean? Does it actually refer to the length of time during which the operations will be ongoing for 3 years? What is the scope of the operation from your perspective? And is it, in fact, some undefined relationship between time and scope?
It's not well defined. It's a severe problem with the language in Section 2C, and it's not just one problem of lack of clarity. It's multiple problems. Enduring has no particular legal meaning. That, in some people's minds, could reasonably refer to years. In other people's minds, the Secretary of State the other day, on Tuesday, referred to a couple of weeks or a few weeks. Well, reasonable people can disagree about what enduring means. Offensive is difficult to describe. So, for example, the upcoming operation to liberate the city of Mosul, is that an offensive operation? You can see where someone would view it that way. But on the other hand, it's not like ISIL was in that city all along. ISIL came in and took it. Is it defensive to drive them back out? Ground combat. If you have forward air controllers who are on the ground and are directing airstrikes or assisting with the direction of airstrikes, is that a ground combat operation? There's ways to try to handle this by offering statements like the President's transmittal letter referring to, well, here's a list or an enumeration of particular types of activities that we mean to be okay. But at the end of the day, none of that gets enacted in the AUMF. The AUMF's text will say no enduring offensive ground combat operations, and that language should be dropped.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, and maybe you can help me with this. So there's been many mentions. I mean, if you take a look at the language, it also repeals the 2002 AUMF. But my reservations are in regards to the still in effect 2001 AUMF. So my question is, and in fact, many people have already said it, the conflict that we're in right now, what's happening right now is based on the 2001 and 2002 AUMF. So what is your perspective with the fact that the 2001 AUMF will still be in effect based on this draft? What does that mean? I mean, we're currently operating with those two AUMFs. Is, in fact, this particular draft necessary to continue operation?
Well, so what it means very simply is that the additional authorization here is purely additive, not there's no, the interaction between this and the underlying document is that this merely adds authority. It does not tailor authority. It doesn't really, despite the optics, at least as a legal matter, it doesn't limit authority. And I think if I have one message for this committee, it is think about the new authorization in interaction with the prior authorization, because otherwise you end up talking about restrictions that aren't real restrictions, and you also end up imposing, you end up doing all kinds of things that you don't know you're doing or you don't mean to be doing because there are these other documents out there. And so think about it as though you had to today answer the question, what force do we want to be authorizing overseas in general against the groups that we might want to use force against? And some of that involves rewriting the old AUMF, and some of it involves the discrete expansion of it into the ISIL and Associated Forces Department. But think about that question holistically. Don't try to think about it as, hey, what can we add that's on ISIL in particular, because then you end up with restrictions that don't seem to mean what they say.
Okay, and then one more question, and I guess we'll have to wait for your response in writing. But I'm just questioning why you think there was no geographical limitations put in this current draft. So if you can think about that and maybe just send us the information. I
can give you a 2-second answer to that because the administration wanted to maintain flexibility.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.